Welcome to another installment of r/Maliciouscompliance, where you're actually happy when you're told what to do. As always, if you enjoy these Reddit stories, or if you notice that I got a new mic, please hit that like button and consider subscribing, as this all really helps my channel grow and pushes me to create more videos. Our first story was posted by GM10-96. Are you sure you want to play this game? Years ago, I worked for a family-run business. I usually worked 40 plus hours every week, and when my first check didn't reflect time and a half, I went to the accounting person who informed me that the time and a half was not a benefit we offered. Okay? It's a federal law, but whatever. Fast forward months of working for a company 40 plus hours a week. One day, I decided to test for a city job. No guarantee I would get it, but it was a full day test on a weekday. I had to ask for a day off. Keep in mind, I had only used one vacation day until this point. Being honest, I told them what I needed it for and that I wasn't sure if I'd get the job. They granted the day. However, when I got back the day after, I was fired. I applied for unemployment as the firing was a surprise. Someone from the unemployment office called to tell me that my request was denied, as my former employer stated I had received warnings. I had not. Interesting. Since I have an email from my manager from earlier the week I was fired saying what a great job I was doing and how our customers loved me. And they don't pay time and a half overtime. The unemployment guy says he'll call me back. On callback, he advised he overrode the denial and I would be getting my unemployment and who I should call to file a complaint for the unpaid wages. I didn't think twice. Took all the copies of my pay stubs and timesheets and filed the complaint. They launched an investigation and he was non-compliant with their request for a meeting. Got to the point that the investigator just showed up one day and walked into his office. They demanded his books and every employee, past and present for something like 7 years prior, got paid what they were owed. Plus he had to pay a penalty. All while another company was in negotiations to merge with his. What kind of company is this? Aren't they aware that one single complaint can launch a full-scale investigation? All that money they saved from not paying overtime was definitely not as much as the amount of money they had to pay in fines, and in addition to that, the other company most likely backed out of the merger, resulting in much lower net profits. So the next time someone makes fun of you for wanting a paper trail, just remember this story. Our next story was posted by Counter Street. Height approved. This isn't my story, but my parents. It was probably the first time I witnessed malicious compliance, and I still remember it well. It was about 25 years ago, so I was about 8, and we had just moved into a 150-year-old house that was in need of major repairs. My dad, thinking ahead, knew he would need a large garage/workshop to really get started on the renovations properly. On the edge of our yard was an ancient barn that was falling apart and needed to be torn down. My dad figured this would be the best place to build his new workshop, so that was the plan. We had met and were on good terms with all the neighbors at that point. When the plans for the new workshop were finished, my parents went around to all the neighbors as a courtesy to show them the plans and get their blessings. The neighbors whose property the current barn and new workshop would border, I'll call them the Peters, were concerned about the height. The existing barn was 16 feet high and they asked if we could only build it one story, 12 foot max, as to not block the sun in their yard. Sure, no problem. My parents agreed. They wanted to go 2 stories for extra storage, but one wasn't a deal breaker. So the old barn was torn down and the foundation laid for a new one. During that time, there was a falling out with the Peters and my parents. I'm not sure what happened, but it turned nasty. One day, my brother and I were playing street hockey and Mr. Peter came out yelling at us. "Get off the road, you half-breeds." My dad is black, so we're both half black. "You have to earn your place in this town." Upon hearing this, my mom had to physically restrain my dad from going over there and beating the living crap out of him. Eventually, he cooled off and started on his plan. The plans for one story went out the window. Soon, the new garage that was only supposed to be one story soon gained a second in the blueprints. If they were going to direct racist comments at his kids, my dad would build what he wanted. As construction started, the Peters came over to ask why there was 2 stories being built and were told to go F themselves. We didn't hear from them again until the roof started to go on. The bylaws of the township limited all out structures to 24 feet high. The Peters called the township and then a building inspector, claiming that the new garage was over 24 feet high. If it was over height, the entire thing would have to be torn down and rebuilt, costing us tens of thousands of dollars. I remember the Peters standing there watching the inspector with a smug look on their faces. 2 days later, we got the final report back from the township and inspector. 23 feet 11 inches, just as my dad had drawn up in his new plans. He sent me up on the roof of the garage, just plywood, no shingles yet, with some spray paint, and had me write 23 feet 11 inches. Height approved, in 2-foot high neon orange letters across the entire roof, facing their yard and house. Not only did the garage block all sunlight from reaching their yard, but my dad waited until everything was done before he shingled that side of the roof. They had to stare at those neon orange letters for almost 3 years. It may not be much, but it certainly ruined the enjoyment of their newly darkened yard, and there was nothing that could be done about it, because it was height approved. They didn't comply with Peter's request, but they certainly complied with the bylaws as maliciously as they could. This neighbor sounds like he has some problems. After being racist to your neighbor's kids, you have the audacity to walk over and ask them why their garage is 2 stories? Somebody get this man some milk, he needs a nap. Our last story was posted by Diba_. No problem, I'll print that video for you, and while I'm at it, I might have you fired as well. Hi all, this is my first submission to this sub, and I hope you enjoy it. There's a TLDR at the bottom. Context: this happened a few years ago. I was 18 and working as a receptionist for a community nursing service. As the youngest in the team by a long shot, the average of employees being around 55 to 60, I was usually the one responsible for the computer stuff. Mostly just the simple things. Nothing a quick Google search couldn't solve. The other staff members were wonderful and I learned a lot from working with them. Except for the assistant manager, Karen. This woman was the bane of my existence. She was 75 plus, recently came out of a 15-year retirement as a receptionist, and was armed with a certificate in business management from a 4-hour online course. She refused to use basic computer skills such as Word or email, stating that she didn't need to learn them again when she had others to do it for her, namely me. In a 5-hour shift, I would spend 3 hours just fielding her tasks. Needless to say, this came along with all the personality traits that make a manager from heck. Time to cue malicious compliance. At the start of my shift, I received an email from Karen asking me to print the attached files. One was a PDF and the other was an MP4. So assuming she just meant the PDF, I take the printed copy to her. This is roughly how the exchange went. Why do you only have 1 file? I sent 2. You want me to print an MP4? Isn't that what I asked? A monkey could do your job, and probably better at that. Here, I'm pretty sure she laughed at her own joke. Look, I don't think you understand. Don't try and teach me. Don't forget I did your job for 20 years, and now I could have you fired. Already over it, and ready for some malicious compliance. Okay, well, I never printed this type of file before, so it might take a while. Karen interrupts. I don't care how long it takes. I'm your boss and I've told you to do this. Once it's done, you can move on to the other jobs. I'm grinning ear to ear at this point. I get back to my desk and send her an email summarizing our conversation, and explicitly clarifying she wanted me to print an MP4. To which I got a snarkly reply, perfect. I spent the next 4 to 5 hours pausing the video every 2 to 3 frames, screenshotting it, pasting it to a Word document, and printing. The administrative tasks piled up. Not that Karen noticed because she mostly spent her time reading magazines / talking on the phone. I felt bad as this placed an extra load on the other receptionist, However, since Karen was universally hated, they gave me their blessings. Once complete, I took about 100 pages carefully held with clips to her desk and sweetly told her that I printed the other file. She looked smug until she saw what was in front of her. Page after page of almost the same picture as the man moves through the video, some slightly blurry, all in full color. She was furious to say the least. But I was 1 hour overtime on my shift and Karen knew that would already cause her some issues, so she let me leave. Though I knew it wasn't over yet. As expected, I get called into HR for a meeting the following week where they accused me of wasting company time and not complying with management. I explained the situation in detail and showed them the email, including her awful reply. I also showed them a few more emails and texts where Karen used some particularly descriptive words to insult our staff members, including the very HR rep taking the interview. Turns out this was the straw that broke the camel's back, as Karen had multiple reports against her from other staff members, and she had been driving HR insane with her own complaints. She lost her job the following week. The best part is this happened on a Sunday where I got double pay. I took some of that sweet overtime cash and brought in cupcakes to work once Karen was gone. I said it was an end of week treat, but we all knew what we were celebrating. The HR rep seemed to particularly enjoy hers. TLDR, boss made me print a video. Compiled, used the whole shift and overtime. Got called into HR, which added to the case against my boss. She was fired within a week. Cupcakes to celebrate. I know that Karen was old and it's hard for her to even understand digital formats, but how else does she expect you to print sound and video on paper? That concludes this episode of r/malicious compliance. If you enjoyed, please like, comment, and subscribe, as this all really helps my channel grow and pushes me to create more videos. Also, I'll be posting videos every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday, so turn on notifications to be notified for my next video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.